Hello and welcome to This Week on Planet Earth. I'm your co-host Jacob.
And I'm your co-host Matty, where each week we break down the latest space exploration, science and technology news.
So without further ado, let's get into this week's stories. So I'm kicking off this week with kind of like a return back to a story we covered a couple of episodes ago. And this was the mysterious hut that was on the moon that I kept saying looked really weird and it looked kind of interesting. And all of the newspapers ate it up like there was no tomorrow. Anyway, I want to say U2 rover that's been exploring the far side of the moon since the early 2019, sorry, not the early 1900s, that would be a really long time ago. Has kind of just been like looking around, and they originally spotted that and they decided that they were going to go over and have a look at it, but it's just turned out to be a rock. So I thought that was cool, and I thought we needed to give it a little bit of justice and kind of let everybody know what the update is with that, because I got my hopes up.
Yeah, I'm looking at there's an amazing picture on this article of the rock, and it's literally just a picture of me with a rock circled. It's not even like an impressive rock.
I know.
I mean, it's difficult to obviously judge the size of it, but it looks like it could be like the size of your fist or something.
I know. And the like the original image, it just looked kind of intriguing because it did look square, but I guess it's just the way it was sitting on the horizon.
Yeah.
But either way, it's funny.
No, wasn't to be.
No.
My first bit of news is about Facebook, or Meta as they're known now. So the authorities in the US, the US Federal Trade Commission, have been given the go-ahead to potentially try and break up Meta. So this is under anti-competition laws. So their case is that Facebook, by purchasing Instagram and WhatsApp mainly, have sort of manufactured their own monopoly in social media.
Yeah.
So they are trying to basically force Meta to sell off these products, and it's been given the go-ahead. So this has already been thrown out once, but they've now got a new case at it. And yeah, it's. I don't think they've got a date set for the case yet, but at some point it will be given a hearing, and Facebook might have to sell off Instagram and WhatsApp.
That's nuts.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder who's going to come in and take those. Because obviously it couldn't be another big corporation that could buy it, could it? Because otherwise it would just be like selling too.
No, I think I might be getting too far ahead of myself, but I don't think there will be a complete sell-off. I think if anything happens, they will force them to put in some fluffy sort of regulation, which means that Instagram and WhatsApp are sort of independent and have their own like boards and stuff. But I don't think Facebook will be too worried about this. As I said, it's only been thrown out once, so
yeah,
we'll wait and see.
Interesting though, nevertheless.
Mm-hmm.
So my second story is an interesting one, and I've seen it was kind of getting reported the last couple of days. We record on a Wednesday, for anyone's curious, but it's come out now that the Changi 5 probe has found evidence of water on the moon's surface, and I know, like, this has been talked about for ages, hasn't it? About there being water, at least at the poles.
Mm-hmm.
On the moon. But from what this looks like, it kind of goes on to say that the China lunar lander had found water on the surface of the moon, marking the first ever time scientists had found on-site evidence of the substance on Earth's satellite. In a study published in Science Advances, China's research claimed that the lander detected signs of water molecules, or hydroxyl, a close chemical cousin to H2O, and it was in abundance, and the water concentration of less than 120 parts per million, making the surface of the lunar much drier than that of Earth.
Mm-hmm.
So, kind of looks cool. I don't really understand it, but I find it very interesting.
Yeah, they've been looking for evidence, and I think, I could be wrong, but I think they did. We have got other evidence for water on the moon going quite a way back, so I think using sort of satellites and telescope techniques, they have found evidence for surface water, but this is the sort of first types being found by a probe on the surface. So
Yeah.
it sort of adds to this idea that there might be water on the moon that we could use going forward for moon bases and fuel and things like that. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, this.
My next bit of news is an interesting one. It's a recent study done by a group of scientists at the University of Cambridge and with the British Antarctic Survey, and they've found that there's a potential risk of invasive species being inserted into the Antarctic environment. So the research has identified 1,581 ports that have links to Antarctica. So these will be research vessels and supply vessels, and also sort of growing industry in cruises and tourism. And there's a risk that particularly aquatic life, so we're not talking about things like rats sort of infesting Antarctica or anything at the moment, but things like mussels, barnacles, crabs that could exist on the ship's hull could potentially be transported to Antarctica and, like with other invasive species in different environments, cause environmental damage. And it's a particular concern things that go from pole to pole, so like research vessels and ships that like go from the North Pole to the South Pole, because those organisms are already adapted for living in cold environments, so they could thrive on the other poles. Obviously, that wouldn't be good. Things like penguins only live at the South Pole or in the Southern Hemisphere. If you take a crab that would kill all of the penguins' food in the Southern Hemisphere, then that's not going to be good.
No.
Yeah, it's an interesting study. I thought, and surprising how sort of connected Antarctica is.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think I'd never really thought about like how connected everything is until even like the pandemic. That's kind of shown me how quick things can get around the planet. I know that's like a virus and it's not an animal, but it just shows you when you think of like the amount of stuff that we move around the planet, even when it comes to like vegetables and fruits. Like I know there's a lot of insects and stuff that get transported on those, and you hear like horror stories all the time in like supermarkets where there's like tarantulas and stuff like that inside bananas. So I can't even begin to imagine the amount of like species that probably get shifted around the planet that we don't even know about, never mind that we do know about.
Yeah, definitely.
It's interesting. So for my last little bit of space news, news, it's going to be space news. It's this Mechazilla grabbing robot arm that is going to catch, I think, Falcon 9 boosters. So we've decided to talk about this now because Matty has only just discovered it. He messaged me this week being like, have you heard of this? I've only just discovered this. And I was like, no way, we've got to talk about it. I can't believe I've not mentioned it yet. But yeah, this basically got, I think, announced last year, or not announced, it was at least getting talked about last year on a few podcasts. And I think Elon had said some stuff about it. And then I know a few people on like social media that were good at like doing 3D renders and like animation had kind of made some really cool concepts of like how it might work. And Elon had commented on them and said, no, this bit will be smaller and this bit will look like this. So people had an idea of what it was going to look like. But yeah, they posted a video. I'm not sure if it was SpaceX or if it was him, but it was one of them. They posted a video of this thing. It's not in action yet because I don't think they've announced a date where they're going to try and catch a rocket yet. But yeah, it looks interesting, doesn't it? Essentially, it's like robot chopsticks. There's going to be like two poles sticking out, and this rocket's going to come down and catch on it.
Yeah, it's a pretty incredible sight. So it's sort of the size of a launch tower. That's like the size of the structure, and these arms that are moving, they're not like quickly grabbing the rocket, but they sort of move in, and then the rocket, I think, has like fins or some sort of stabilizer that sort of rest on it, so it ends up sort of hung from these two arms as they move in. But yeah, it's pretty cool. And I imagine they've been talking about obviously improving the reusability of spacecraft, and this would certainly do it because a spacecraft could essentially just hover down and land to you without any sort of risk of crashing on the ground itself.
Yeah, and it helps with turnaround as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can, if I'm assuming eventually that arm will move when it is in like practice for like Mars or the moon or for the Earth. So you'll be able to like move rockets on and off the pad, either when they're taking off or landing.
Yeah.
So could be cool.
Yeah, definitely.
Sounds interesting.
Mm-hmm. My last bit of news is also space related, and of course we couldn't not talk about James Webb Space Telescope.
Yep.
So just before Christmas, our final episode of 2021, we talked about how it was expected to launch, and it has now launched. So it launched on Christmas Day, and I think the overall news is it's going well. Everything has now been deployed, sort of mechanical wise. So the sun shield and the mirrors have been sort of straightened out, and they are in the process of testing and making sure that everything works before it actually goes into service. So, an amazing achievement.
Yeah, no, it is. It's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
It really is. We weren't sure if it was going to go up, were we? And we kept talking about it, but
yeah, it already pushed back, just eked back a few times because of weather and stuff.
Yeah,
but yeah, they did go eventually.
I saw one of the hardest photos I've ever seen in my life, and it was like a photo of all the scientists with a selfie in the mirror. I don't know if you've seen this one.
Yeah.
And it's just so cool.
Yeah, it's amazing. That mirror is just incredible, isn't it? The design of it, and
it's going to be able to see back to just before the Big Bang, right?
Just after the Big Bang.
Oh, just after the Big Bang, yeah.
Yeah. Wow. A long way back.
Yeah, it's like 13 billion years, isn't it?
Yeah, it gets complicated because of inflation and stuff. But yeah, cool, it's going to be pretty incredible, I think. And they've already sort of caveated it and said we mightn't see as amazing pictures as Hubble because it works in the infrared rather than in visible light.
Yeah,
I think we're still going to get some pretty cool images. So
yeah, no, it's going to be really, really cool. I'm really excited to see when we get images for that. I wonder when that will be. Hopefully, it'll definitely be this year, right? I can imagine so.
I think certainly sort of test images and stuff. I don't know whether we'll be doing proper surveys and stuff this year, but yeah, it'll be good.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that kind of sums it up for this week on Planet Earth. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure to hit that subscribe button because we're on that road to 100 for this. And yeah, we'll also be dropping a podcast episode this week on the Infinite Void, and it's going to be part 3 of our series, What is Free Will? And it's all about our final thoughts and conclusions. So head over there and check that out. And if you want to stay up to date with this on social media, you can follow it at Twope News, and you can also follow the podcast at Infinite Void Pod. And yeah, we will catch you next episode.